Hi, this is Robert Rapier from R Squared, and this is episode 5 of R Squared Energy TV. This week's episode deals with Cleantech and the success or failure of Cleantech at this point, whether I retain any oil industry ties, and what professions would be best in a peak oil world, and what books maybe present a better outcome for society relative to peak oil. So the first question, do you have any comments on Matthew Nordan's recent 4-part response to Peter Thiel's comments on Cleantech BC as a failure? Peter Thiel recently wrote that Cleantech had been a big failure, and Vinod Khosla came back and said, absolutely not, my investors have made billions of dollars. And I wrote a post where I talked about, it really depends on the metric of success. If the metric of success is that companies are delivering energy, then Thiel is right, Cleantech has not yet delivered. Khosla's right, his investors have made money, but that's on companies that have not yet delivered anything. So this column, Matthew Nordan, I read through it. It was a very well written column, but it again focused on financial measures as opposed to whether or not any of the companies actually delivered. So, and the person who posed that question noted that and said that my pessimism seems to be on the pace of development, noting that the transition is just not happening fast enough. Really, my pessimism is more on the liquid fuels side. I don't think they're going to deliver per expectations. Now, the solar side, the efficiency side, those may deliver. They're really fundamentally different than the liquid fuels piece of Cleantech. I think that's where we're going to fall short. And that's where some of my pessimism lies. I think the capital costs of that are far greater than what people had anticipated, and I think that's why you'd say I'm pessimistic about the Cleantech's ability to deliver in that area. I just think it's not going to be per our expectations. The follow-up: do I retain any connection to the oil industry that my readers, viewers might like disclosed? I wore my ConocoPhillips shirt today. I have free shirts from ConocoPhillips. I still own some stock from ConocoPhillips in my 401k. I check on the stock price once or twice a year. I guessed at what it was right before this episode, and I guessed $70, and it's just about $70. And the reason I guess is that's what it was 6 months ago. So, and then I own some stock in Petrobras. When oil prices bottomed out in 2008, I put some money into Petrobras because I thought they were well positioned to do well in the years ahead. And the stock ran up and then it came back down. I guessed the price of it too, and I was off by $14 a share, which shows how closely I watch these things. Both of those companies are doing a lot in alternative energy. They both obviously do a lot in oil production. I think oil companies are going to be valuable for quite some time. When I don't believe that, I won't pitch on behalf of the oil industry. I will sell my stock. But when I buy something, I buy it for the very long term. So those two companies I do have shares in. I rarely write anything about either one of those companies, but those are my two ties. Of course, my job is in renewable energy, and like I said, those two companies have a lot of renewable energy investments. So it's not like I'm solely focused on the oil industry. Next question. What books do you recommend that choose a more positive outlook on our future and are actual realistic predictions? I think anything by Bob Hirsch, anything by Jeff Rubin. I've got their two books, their two most recent books at home. They present, I think, a sober, realistic assessment of the future, especially Hirsch. He looks at some alternative scenarios, how this might play out. And I think that's a good approach, because we don't know the future. None of us knows how this is going to play out. So it's good to look at scenarios. What if this happens? What if that happens? And Bob Hirsch, in the Hirsch Report, which is freely available, you can look up Hirsch Report and read through that report. And then he's co-authored a book where he goes into different mitigation strategies. Jeff Rubin, Why Your World is Going to Get a Lot Smaller. That's a very good book. Another reader asked me the question, noted that I've got Twilight in the Desert. That's one of the books behind me, and asked about those books too. I pulled a stack, and I actually forgot to pull this stack up last week because there were 3 back there that I meant to grab. So other books back there, Twilight in the Desert by the late Matthew Simmons. I've got Power Hungry by Robert Bryce. And then The Black Swan. And The Black Swan is not an energy book, it's a probability book. It's about the impact of very low low probability events. It's a very good book. I recommend that to anybody, not just people who are interested in energy, but anybody who wants to think about what are the ramifications of very, very minor probability events. And it's a very, very well written book. Power Hungry by Robert Bryce. He's does a lot of debunking of green energy and myths there. He's taken a lot of criticism from the green energy people, and I've written about him before in that book. I think the difference in him and me is he enjoys that criticism. I don't really like the criticism very much. I said that he enjoys wearing the black hat. I don't enjoy so much wearing the black hat, but sometimes I feel like I have to. Matthew Simmons, Twilight in the Desert. Matthew got a lot of things wrong here, but he overall he's had a tremendous influence on the debate and the way we think about peak oil, and had a tremendous influence on me. So this book is one of the most important books I've ever read, even if some of the details ended up not being exactly correct. Also, do I see a future in petroleum engineering, as most think will be a doomed profession within the next 20 to 30 years? If I chose to become more involved in other energy solutions, what would I recommend studying? I think petroleum engineering, I think oil is going to be around a long time. We're going to need petroleum engineers. You're going to be going to probably more and more far-flung places as the petroleum becomes more and more difficult to get. He also noted that he thought chemical engineers would be a dying profession. Chemical engineers are very versatile. They can go into a lot of different fields. So I am a chemical engineer. I would get a degree in chemical engineering again today. I wouldn't recommend going into anybody in energy production. I think is going to be fairly safe going forward if you know a little bit about energy production, because that's going to be a really important field, I think, in the future. Food production also. I don't produce food for a living, but I do produce it for a hobby. If I had to, I'd know enough about food production that I could, maybe produce a large portion of my family's needs. So if you know a little bit about food production, I think that will help as well. But I advise people, live your life. Look at options. Look at possibilities. The potential for bad things to happen is there. I wouldn't. Some people ask me, should I have kids? The world's going to be a disaster. And I said, well, we don't know the future, so I wouldn't put off having kids just because you're afraid that it may play out like the worst case. Maybe it won't. A lot of people thought we'd be in very, very terrible shape at this point, and we're not in terrible shape. And if I'd not had kids at this point, I think I'd be regretting it. So live your life, do what you want to do. You got to give some serious thought, though, to if there's going to be a job in that particular field. A lot of things, I think, airline pilot, for instance, I don't think that's going to be a growing field. And there are a few fields like that you have to be cautious of. But I think energy producers, petroleum engineers, chemical engineers, I think those are all strong bets. And with that, that's the end of episode 5. Tune in next week. Thank you.